Hi, hello everybody. Welcome to this tutorial. We are going to be doing a machine mat or cover. It's a very speedy one, as are most of my projects. So there quite possibly will be patchwork and quilters all over the place crying. This I'm not doing binding, I'm not doing a lot of quilting, but it's just a really simple project, and I'm sure, depending on how much time you've got and your preference, you can make it more intricate and more fiddly than mine, but as usual mine is like the bare basics. So it's quite a big project to do, so I'm hoping I've got the camera angles okay. You might find that the camera's in my face a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure your machine, so I'm just going to flip you around. So this is my little mat, so it just sort of sits over your machine like that and ties at the side. Well, I've got ribbon on, or it could be could make matching cord or whatever. So to measure your machine, I'm going to take a couple of measurements. I want to measure, let's push that back so you can see most of it. I want to measure across the width of the sewing machine, and I'm going to go from the lowest part here, so that I'm making sure that I get the bottom of the machine all the way across, and I'm also making sure, just tilt that slightly, that I'm also incorporating the side wheel. Now, your preference is entirely up to you. Some people might just keep it as a flat mat with it every so often, putting it like that when it needs to go away and you don't want it to get dusty or scratched. So I measured mine, and it's roughly about 40 centimetres. Including my hand wheel at the side. So the width of my fabric is going to be 42, and then the other measurement I want to take is sort of from the bottom all the way up and over and down here. So I'm just putting my tape measure on the table, coming up over, and I'm also going to go over my thread because that's going to be the highest point, and down here. And it's about 68 centimetres, so my width is going to be 70. So the rectangles I'm starting off with for my lining fabric and my wadding are all 70 centimetres by 42. So if your fabric's got a direction, this may affect yours. This one has, and yeah, I think I'm sort of getting away with it because it's very subtle, but if you've got a definite direction, then that might affect obviously how much fabric you need. But I actually fit this, because this is a wider fabric, I fit my main fabric on a fat quarter. This is a bit of a fat quarter, and then that was 1/2 metre. So the outer main, the lining and the wadding all start off the same size, and for me it's 70 centimetres by 42. Now pocket, again, because it's a quick, speedy make, I've just gone for one strip of one colour. So it's the same, it's 42 wide and it's 30 centimetres deep. This is folded over, and the fold becomes that top edge of the pocket. But what I'll do is I'll do a little diagram, and I'll pop it on the Facebook resource folder with all the other gubbins in there. But if you were just scrap busting, you could do each little pocket separately, or you can certainly patch together things. There is quite a few scraps with this, so I've made a couple of extras that I'll show you at the end of things you can make in matching fabric. But you could definitely quite easily patch together some fabrics, and they could form your seams. It doesn't have to be yet another piece of fabric. So the first thing we're going to do is create the pocket. So hopefully you can see that. You'll be able to see me. So what I've done is I've got my pocket material, and I'm just going to fold it in half so that the wrong sides are going together, and just give it a little press. And I'm going to line it up on the bottom edge of my mat or cover, so that the raw edges that are folded together are going along here, and the fold is going up into the machine mat. I'm going to put a few pins in place, and I'm going to start measuring things out. So I made some measurements yesterday based on what I wanted to store in here. Now obviously you might not want to store those same things, so you might want to do your pockets slightly different sizes. So let's pop it here, and hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit better rather than me stretching over there. So my measurements are 8.5 centimetres, then 6, then 2.5, and then I've done 5 centimetres from this side. Our seam allowance is a centimetre, so just be aware of that. So you're going to be taking a centimetre from either side. So I measured for my rotary cutter, my scissors, my trick marker, and then a miscellaneous pocket, and then I've got another little strip on the side which I'm going to add some accessories to. So I'm going to use my air erasable pen. Anything like that would be good. If you're using a tailor's chalk pencil, then what I would recommend is doing your markings on the back, and then obviously if you don't wash it and they don't come off, then it's not the end of the world, because you don't want to have all these big chalk marks down the front of your machine mat. So you could have loads of different pockets depending on what you want to store, but my go-to things generally are rotary cutter, scissors. So it's 8.5, 6, and then 2.5. And my pen, I always use. I love my trick marker. Really, really don't know how I sewed without it for so long. It's a godsend. So my chin is right in the way of all the questions, but when I adjust myself, I'll have a look and see if anyone's asking anything, if I've missed anything or anyone's missed me saying any of the measurements. So let's try and make sure these are as square as possible. Ideally, you might want to use your cutting, your perspex ruler to make sure they're bang on and they're not kind of wonky, because it'll be fairly obvious when you sew it if they are a little bit off being square. So before I sew down these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer up my wadding and my fabric together, so that in effect I'm sort of getting a little bit of quilting while I'm doing this. I'm stitching the two together. Now, if you are a quilter and you do like quilting, you might like to do all sorts of different decorative quilting before you put the backing on, or even when you put the lining fabric on and then bias bind the edges. Like I said, I'm going to keep this fairly simple. So grab my wadding. I took 1/2 metre of the 4-ounce wadding, and actually I managed to fit 2 mats on 1/2 metre. I suppose if you've got a bigger machine, you maybe wouldn't be able to do that. But I've just managed to sneak it on. So I'm going to put a few pins in that, and I'm just going to flip it again because I want to get that as smooth as possible. Oops, throwing things all off the floor now. So the smoother this is now, then obviously the less likely it is you're going to have any sort of ripples in your quilting. So I'm just going to readjust my pins so now they're going through all 3 layers: pink fabric, teal fabric and my wadding. And then I'm ready to start doing my pockets. So because I've got quite a bulky project, I'm going to adjust my stitch size. Now when my machine comes on, my machine is always set to 1. It's a digital machine, so when it comes on it always springs back with the exact same settings. Now if yours is a manual machine and you've change your dials, then just make sure that you are still on straight stitches. And what I'm going to do is just change the length. So 2.2 is great. Anything sort of between 2 to 3 is great for just regular sewing, but I'm going to make them a little bit bigger so that they are far further spaced apart. So about 3 to 3.5. Not any bigger, because then they start looking like basting stitch and looking a little bit loose, but just because of all that bulk, I'm going to start with 3. So I'm going to start at the top end of my cushion. Sorry, not my cushion, my pocket. I'm just going to be really careful, slow my needle, and make sure I'm right on that top edge. And I'm going to do 3 stitches forwards, 3 back, and then come towards myself. Now I threaded up with teal, so I'm doing teal on pink, so I've got a harder job to make that look really neat. And I'm just going to slide straight off the end. I'm not going to do my reversing at the end. You can do if you want to. But of course, we're going to be trapping that in a seam. And I do want to try and avoid as any sort of slightly unsightly stitching as much as I can. Just all the time, just trying to keep it nice and smooth, not create any kind of unnecessary crinkles in my layers. Again, just making sure I'm right in the right place there. There we go. I've got 2 more lines to do. It's a bit of pressure off really, because this is all your visible stitching. It's very noticeable. It's the main focus of your mat, so just remember to breathe while you're doing it. So got my little pockets on there, and I'm ready to put my lining fabric on. So before I sew it up, I'm going to trap some ribbons in the side. So we're going to put it back over the machine just to sort of visualise where they will be going. So right sides together. So I said, if you were a quilter and you loved doing all decorative quilting, then what you might want to do is put your backing on the back, do all your lovely quilting, free motion or whatever, and then bind the end. But I'm just going to do a simple kind of bagging it out and turn it round like this, because as always I am a bit of a speedy sewer, and it is probably going to spend most of its life just sat under my machine, so it doesn't matter too much whether it's too decorative or not. And I'm just going to flip my pins now, again through all 3 layers. Quite a few pins in at this stage because I don't want any of the fabric to move. Just a nice big sharp glass head pins are ideal for this. Get through all of your layers and don't kind of touch any of your fibres. Poke any of your fibres from your wadding through. So just before I go to sew all of that, I'm going to drape it back over the machine like this, and I'm going to work out where I want these ribbon ties. So obviously it will be a little bit longer because there's no seam allowance, but what I kind of worked out the other day was that I liked the idea of the ribbon being around about the top line on the front, the round about the top of my pocket, which is about 15 centimetres up. So then about 15 centimetres from the back as well. So from the bottom edge upwards, about 15 centimetres. And I've measured my ribbons about 25 centimetres. So you'll fit all 4 strands of ribbon out of a metre, which is good. So I'll very quickly cut those. It a little bit longer if you wanted. Depends on the width of your sewing machine, how bulky it is, and if you've got dials on the front, then that will also probably add to the bulk. So I've got my ribbons, and I'm just going to take that pin out, and I'm going to put the ribbon inside there, and it's just the little end of it that I want to poke out like that. Just make sure that your ribbon doesn't dangle anywhere you're likely to trap it. So I'll repeat that with the other side. So if anyone's done the crayon or the makeup brush roll, you'll kind of remember that this is a fairly similar process like that. And then I'm just going to flip it round and measure up 15 centimetres. Wherever my ruler's over here. And insert that ribbon there. Obviously, it's probably a little bit easy if you're doing it on a flat surface, but we'll get there. And then 15 centimetres up from here. I'm just going to tuck that in there and make sure that doesn't get caught in anything I don't want it to. So again, I'm going to leave my stitch on that slightly longer stitch length. It isn't too slack so that things are going to come undone, but it is slack enough so that my fabrics aren't going to be super tight. So I'm going to leave my gap at the bottom edge, so at the back of your mat. So if maybe your slip stitching isn't the best, if you're not the best slip stitcher, or you do want to just top stitch it with the machine, then you can, you probably won't see it a great deal at the back. So Catherine has just asked about 3 stitches forwards and backwards. Basically, the reason I do 3 stitches forwards, I'll do it now because I'm going to leave my gap, and then go into reverse 3 stitches. So you basically stitch on top of your original stitches and then naturally have to come forwards again. So you triple the stitching and you secure it all. So no matter how tough the wear and tear of it stops those stitches coming undone. Some people, like traditionally, will tie a little double knot with their fingers, but that reverse function is what that is for. It's to secure everything. Let's drop my needle at the corner. Oh, pressing all the wrong buttons here. Whoa. Oh, I pressed the wrong button, so it's doing a few stitches on the spot. It's not so easy for me at the moment because I'm at a very peculiar angle trying to keep this the camera, but you want to keep it as flat and as smooth as you can, and really do just go slow and steady. Got one more long edge to do, and then we're nearly back to the beginning. So you can hopefully almost see, and when I'm back at the beginning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a bit hands width gap like that, and just pop a little pin there as a reminder to stop. I would always avoid leaving any gaps on corners because it makes it so flipping hard to neatly hand stitch that up, or even machine stitch. I'd always leave it on a straight. Doesn't matter how near it is to the corner, but actually just avoid the corner itself. And then that black pin will remind me as a little prompt to stop. And then go into reverse again. So 1, 2, 3, 3 forwards again. So all those triple stitches, really nice and secure. And then I can start taking all my pins out and clipping any corners and seams. I'm just going to see if there's any more questions whilst I'm taking them out. So if you've got any, just shout them. Well, not shout them. I wish you could. I wish you could actually hear. Just type them for me. So on the corners, I'm just going to reduce the bulk. So get a crisper corner. Obviously, there's wadding in there, so it's probably never going to be the crispest. But just at an angle, I'm just going to take the excess fabric off and as close to the stitches as I sort of dare to go. So you don't want to get so close that you weaken the seam, but equally you don't want to be too far away that it doesn't have any impact, like that. And I'm going to turn, oh my God, that is a tiny gap. I think I've been a bit optimistic there. We'll see how it goes. So I'm going to turn my cover now back in on itself. My Lord, that's a very optimistic gap. Let's take the pins out. That's always going to help, isn't it? Yeah, all the pins are out now. So I'm just going to reach in and grab the furthest corner away and try and pull it through like that. And hopefully I haven't made that gap too small and I don't rip any of those stitches. So I just need to do this nice and slowly, not rush. Need to fight with this on my knee, I'm afraid. Note to self, leave a slightly bigger gap, even if you do hate hand stitching. It's going. It's looking less than glamorous, but it's going. Nearly there. It's always that stage, isn't it, where your project looks absolutely horrific and you think, oh my God, what have I done? Oh, sugar. What have I done? Oh. Thanks, Leslie, you can do it. Oh. Right. Oh, there we go. Starting to look like a bit of something now, isn't it? Right, so I'm going to get my trusty knitting needle, which I think I threw on the floor by accident about 5 minutes ago. And I'm just going to encourage those corners out. Not too much force because, of course, I've just weakened the seam by clipping them. So I'm just going to just gently encourage them out, just so that they're a little bit more pointed than what we've got at the moment. Let's fight my way through all of the layers. There we go, that's looking better. My last corner, give it all a big shake out. My tripod. Oh, knitting needles are having none of it today. So, got my mats. It's definitely looking there. Let's get rid of those. Some bobs we don't need. Now I am going to give it a light press, but it really will be a light press. Unless you've got a natural wadding or a heat resistant one, then you really don't want to iron too much on this, because you will sort of compact all the fibres of the wadding, because of course synthetic fibres react to a much lower temperature of heat than natural ones do. So just a light press just to get my seams on the edges and just square off those corners and make it all a bit flatter. Like that. This probably obviously is one of the only times it will go near the iron. Oh, you can see me while I'm at that angle. I think you can. Oh no, maybe not. So, get rid of all my gum. We'll throw it over. We're almost there now. So we've got our cushion, like that. And then I've just got a couple of little accessories. So my idea was to hold my rotary cutter, my scissors and my trick mark, which I think has escaped onto the floor somewhere in all of the commotion. So I'll tie my ribbons at the side, tie my other one there, and then I'm going to show you a little couple of accessories that I've made with my scraps, and I'll show you how to do slip stitching, which will be how you would stitch up your gap on your cover and also on these accessories. So it's all tied up like that. So my idea is I would put my rotary cutter in, my scissors in. Like I said, I think my pen has escaped somewhere on my floor. So it rolled away somewhere, so I'm sure I've got something else I can pop in. Oh no, it's not. It's there. And then I've got whatever else I want to put in there. Now on here, what my idea was to sew a couple of buttons on, so that when you are using your machine and your mat is draped over here, that you could hang off a couple of accessories. So I've made a little miniature storage part with my scrap fabrics. Now, Emma Horrobin, I hope I'm saying her surname right, gave me these dimensions ages ago. She made them this size, a miniature version's the one we did. So I've pinched her dimensions tonight. So the idea was, if you sewed a button on or a couple of buttons on, wherever you wanted them, you could then hang your little accessories on. So that's my storage part. And then I've also got a little pincushion. So just literally tiny scraps. So you might want to have one on one side. Depends on where you want them, but obviously you could place things so that they are handy for you when you're sewing. My bits pot is the most important thing in my sewing room. And when it's full or I don't have its hand, bits get everywhere. So was definitely an essential for me. So my little pincushion was just a couple of rectangles of scrap with some matching ribbon, a little bit of excess and some toy stuffing. So what I will do is I will show you how to do slip stitching, which is what you would need to do to finish the gap on your machine cover or mat. So I'm just going to tuck my needle onto the inside, and I'm hoping that the quality of the camera is good enough for you to see. This is not all blurry. It's hard for me to see because I've got the comments in front that you can see it. So what I'm doing basically with my needle, although I'm sewing the two together, I'm going to sew one down one side and this one separately. So I'm just going to go along the fold, so the crease line, it's basically my seam allowance line, if I can see, like that. So I'm sort of sliding this needle along, and they're about 1/2 centimetre, these stitches, like that. Oops. And then where that stitch finishes, at the opposite side, I'm going to start my next stitch. Now, the more accurate you are in doing that, the neater it will look. And then again, I'm going to slide my needle along that crease, like that. I'm hoping that's in focus and you can see it like that. And then just pull my stitch. And again, where that stitch finished, I'm going to start my next one on the opposite side. And I'm going back and forward like that. Sometimes it's called ladder stitch, sometimes it's called slip stitch. And the idea is, the reason it's called ladder stitch is called like little runs on a ladder, and then when you pull them, they will pull together. So it looks really, it's mimicking what your machine stitches are doing. And again, just like that, backwards and forwards. So anything you do that you need to turn out and have a gap in it, like your storage pots, your pin cushion, your machine mat, a little slip stitch is a brilliant tool just to have. And you hope you can see that it basically looks like there isn't any stitches, that like invisible. So it's really good. It's good for mending things as well, rather than trying to botch it with your machine and kind of have those stitches visible. Some people detest hand stitching and really will do anything to avoid this. I'm not a massive hand stitcher, but I do like a slip stitch because I do think it looks really neat. And I'm just going to finish it by just catching a few fibres and going through my loop. I'll just do that one more time, like that, through my loop, and just snip that off. About to say I'd lost my scissors then, but I know exactly where they are, like that. And then I've got my little pin cushion, my bits pot, and I can add my buttons wherever I think they are going to be the most useful for me when I've got my mat in position. So if you haven't made a storage part before, that tutorial is saved under our video section of the Facebook page. And what I will do is I will try and reshare that video, and then it's easier to find. So I'll put the dimensions for everything I've done on today, but obviously your machine will probably be slightly different size, so therefore might need tweaking a little bit, but that should give you an idea of how to make a really simple and pretty but really practical sewing machine mat or cover. And like I said, I'll also reshare this, and then it's dead easy for everyone to find. These are ridiculously addictive in any size, from baby size to nice big ones. I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm really looking forward to next week's tutorial. In fact, I'm just going to spin you around so you probably get my chin in your face. Next week's project is a circular cushion, and then the week after is like a bolster. So they're both interior projects. And even maybe if you didn't like the idea of the cushions, you would still get some techniques from them. So machine gathering, hand gathering, inserting a zip and a bit of piping. So lots of skills there. And then at the end of the month, we're doing a little bunny bag, just getting us ready for Easter. I can't even believe that it is almost that time of year. So thank you for watching. And like I said, I'll put all of that information that you need on the resource album on Facebook. Don't forget to tag me in your pictures.